I'm not the smoothest interviewer, and when I'm interviewing someone I admire, I get even rougher. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I'll be as smooth as stucco on toilet paper.
I used to say a guy in Fort Worth, Texas, Moncrief. I said, "Oh, Texas, smooth as a stucco bathtub."
Yeah, no, I was stealing it from you.
Oh, okay. And he wanted me to. I thought it would piss him off when he saw it in the book. And you saw it in the book too. And he said, "Sign a book for me and say, Tex, you're smooth as a stucco bathtub." And I said, "You like that?" And he said, "Well, that's me." He said, "That's." And do you know him?
No.
Well, he's pretty rough.
A lot of people in this business are. Today's a pretty big day for you. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Big day. I've worked on trying to get America on our own resources. Sounds good. Nobody ever says that's a bad idea. And I started on that a long, long time ago, but I really started to put a lot of money into it July of '08. And that's when I kicked off the Pickens plan. And so we've been at it for, 3.5 years. And it came up in the State of the Union a couple of nights ago, 3 days ago. And that the president mentioned their natural gas. And then he was in Las Vegas today and even mentioned, companies like UPS. And UPS has been a real leader in that. AT&T has too. And so also a company that I am a shareholder in is Clean Energy Fuels. And they had Clean Energy Fuels truck there, parked there, which is pretty neat with the president standing up there talking and the truck right there, UPS truck, Clean Energy Fuel. But what's going to happen is we're going to use natural gas in place of diesel in the United States in heavy-duty trucks. And you've got 8.5 million trucks that fit that category. And what it means to the country is that you'll cut imported oil by 2.5 million barrels when those trucks go to it. And my model to compare to was 1972. You switched from gasoline to diesel. It took 6 years to accomplish it. It was all because of price. Well, today it's happening because of price. Natural gas is $1.50 a gallon cheaper than diesel is.
Every quarter we put out a special edition and we look for world famous entrepreneurs. And sometimes we look for people who have tremendous political impact on business nationally. You're a bit of a hybrid. You're both. And
well, I'm real old.
Well, you're also ironic because normally people who are big proponents of fossil fuel aren't well known for being big proponents of green energy. And you're big on both sides of that fence.
I don't think it's a case that people that are fossil fuel people are not green or not interested in the environment. I don't think they pay much attention to it. It's not that they're against it.
Where I was going was that you're known for being the baby drill guy, and you're also known for being the windmill guy. How do you reconcile that? That does make you unique.
Well, you reconcile because you're for America, so you want American energy in the United States. And 2/3 of our trade deficit is for the purchase of oil. And that isn't necessary because we have plenty of resources in America. So wind for power generation, great. And but that's one of our resources we should use. It should be developed along with solar because eventually, right now, they're too expensive. They can't compete with coal or natural gas for power generation. And so, but we can get to it at some point, and we need to keep, investing in research and all and make it happen. So, it's easy for me to do it. I get there because I'm all American.
What originally got you interested in geology as a course of study when you were younger?
Well, I'm a geologist, got out of school at Oklahoma State in 1951, and so I've been at it. And my whole career is the oil and gas industry. but I'm also into wind too. I mean, I'm an energy guy.
Well, you have strong physical science and engineering prowess, but you also seem to be a bit of a prognosticator. You almost, people who stand back and look at your successes and how good a job you've done at predicting things and where to be at what time. I'm wondering, do you carry a dowsing stick in your back pocket?
No, but if you go back and look at the record, the direction has always been good. I'm not always right, of course, but my direction is a high percentage of success. Where I've missed is on timing, because I thought when I wanted natural gas as a transportation fuel, I started on that in 1988, and I thought I could start to penetrate the market in 3 years. Well, that's 20 years ago, longer, and 25 years ago. But I'm now at where I thought I would be, and well, probably 10 or 15 years ago. So I've been slow getting I'm always optimistic about what I can accomplish.
Well, our magazine was put together with a number of the top consulting companies in North America, and our readership are people who own businesses, board of directors of publicly traded companies, and chief executive officers. And I know that a lot of them would be interested in what Boone thinks is an acceptable risk. You're a bit of a gambler. You've been out there predicting what's going to happen, and with a tremendous amount of success, sometimes pretty far ahead of the curve, but always successful. What do you think is an acceptable risk? What
Risk-reward ratio?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a ratio guy, but I haven't lost any enthusiasm for taking risks.
Well, did you ever roll the dice as a younger person on something you wouldn't be rolling the dice on as the T. Boone of today?
Would I not? Oh, I've had, listen, when you have had as many wins and losses underlined, those losses, they sober you up. And I like to say that I get my finger smashed in the door every once in a while, but I don't go back the same door. And so I have my share of losses. 2008 was the biggest loss year I ever had. And so in 2008, I was 80 years old. And somebody said, gosh, why would you take a risk like that? Well, that's what I like to do. That's what I enjoy doing.
Do you think being a cowboy is part of what it takes to be a good entrepreneur?
Well, when you say cowboy, I guess you're talking about that I do take risk. Well, yeah, that's an entrepreneur is somebody who puts up their own money. And I remember the first time, it was an old lawyer named Ed Sleckman called me an entrepreneur, and I thought he had insulted me because I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. And he said, your personality is already, you are going to be a classic entrepreneur. And when he said that to me, I was in my 30s. So I get that dictionary out and look up entrepreneur. And thought, well, maybe he's right. And he was right, because I don't get in deals that I don't put my own money in. And that happened early. I couldn't put much money in early in my career, of course, because I didn't have much money. But I always had my own skin in the game. And a lot of guys don't like to do that. Does it mean I'm right, they're wrong? Of course not. It's just different styles and personalities as entrepreneurs. I always say that an MBA, what they tell you to do is take the least amount of risk with the greatest opportunity for return. Well, that's good. I like that idea. But at the same time, if you put more of your own money in, you get a bigger return too. And I was advising a young guy the other day, and he said, why have I not gotten rich by now? I said, well, do you put any of your own money in it? He said, no, I don't want to take the risk. I said, well, when you start putting your own money in and you're successful, well, it'll compound your return very fast if you're putting your own money up.
Talking about putting your own money in, you have a philanthropic nature. You've been a steward. You've put your own money in medicine, education, collegiate sports, even the environment, land and water. When you look back, what do you think, where did you have the most profound impact?
On giving? Well, no question, Oklahoma State University, because I've given more there, and and it was both athletics and academics at the school, and both have had great success. And so, the football's easiest place to check your record, because you're going to have 12 games a year, and it's a W&L game, and so this last year that we went to the BCS Bowl, I really had on my predictions and what I thought would happen in that football program. I thought that would come probably 2 years later than it did. So it happened sooner than I thought.
What would you like your legacy to be when you look at the impact you've had on business and energy and college and all the different things? When people think back at T-Boone years from now, and I mean to bury you already, but what would you like your legacy to be?
Oh, I mean, the things that I have focused on. I've been in the oil and gas industry. I think I've had some influence there. I think I did on corporate governance in the 80s and 90s. And, and then this get on your own resources for America. I think all those will be there. I think I've made an impact in all of them. But somebody said, okay, sum it up. I said, on the tombstone, probably just say firm and fair.
When we look at your dad, Thomas, and your mom, Grace, and your grandma, Nellie, and Aunt Ethel, what kind of impact did they have on you and your success and you as a person?
Well, you're talking about in Holdenville, because my grandmother lived next door to me, and my Aunt Ethel did. They were both widows, and my Aunt Ethel had a son who was 5 years older than I was, a lot smarter than I was, too. He has a PhD in chemistry from Michigan State, and he was an editor for Chemical Abstracts in Columbus, Ohio. But he sang in the choir at the church, and he had a beautiful rose garden, and he had a life that fit just exactly what he wanted to do. I've had the same thing. He had no interest in being rich. He wanted to be comfortable, and he was. And I wanted to make a lot of money. So here we were, cousins, and lived next door to each other for a number of years. He had great influence on me. He says, where he confirmed he was smarter than I was, that I'd have never made it through second year algebra if he hadn't been there. And that's probably true. I wouldn't have. And but my interests were different than his, and here we were, related closely and grew up together. And but my aunt and grandmother, my aunt was my school teacher, and she, bless her heart, she gave a nightly report on me to her sister, my mother, and we usually ate together, and she would just openly say that, Grace, that Boone's imagination is going to get him in trouble. Now, I don't know for sure what that meant, but I was in trouble a lot, so I guess my imagination was part of it. But it was a fabulous upbringing. The three women, my mother, aunt, and grandmother, we were together. My dad, he was away a lot. He was a lawyer, worked in the oil business at the time, went broke in '39, and then went to work for Phillips Petroleum. But it was, it's just, it was kind of just small town in eastern Oklahoma, and it was just, you saw life like life was. It was, people have said, well, gosh, you grew up in the Depression. I didn't know that. I knew at dinner there was conversation about people moving to California for work. They had to leave because they didn't have work. I knew that and all, but it wasn't like we were missing meals.
Is there any truth to the story about Jenkins' wallet, that you found a wallet and returned it and got Or could you tell me this story? I've only heard it as hearsay, but
Well, what it was is that we had dinner. The family did together. We ate at my grandmother's house next door. My mother worked, my aunt taught school, and my grandmother had a big garden. Life was that simple, and everybody was expected to have a job. And when I was 12 years old, I got the smallest paper out in town, which is the newest. Paper boy gets the smallest route. I had 28 papers, and I was 13, and my route was one street. It's called Broadway of America, and I really believed that probably was Broadway of America. I had little experience outside of Holdenville, but I came home and was so excited because one of my customers on the paper route had given me $1, and I was telling my grandmother, aunt, and mother this story. I'd come home, and you get home from the paper route about 6 o'clock, about the time that you have supper. You didn't have dinner in Holdenville. That was at noon. It was night, it was supper. And so I got there about supper time, and I came in and said that, and they said, why did your customer give you $1? And I said, well, I found his billfold 2 doors down the street, and it was in deep grass. And I just was walking up to the porch and looked down, and here the billfold was down in the grass. I pulled it out, looked whose it was, took it down 2 doors, and he said, oh my gosh, he said, it's got my driver's license in it. No, at that time, I was 13, so that was 1941. There were no credit cards, and I didn't check to see money in it. I just saw his name and took it down the street. And so he gave me $1 for bringing it to him. And I looked at my grandmother. She was sitting on the left, and my aunt was in the middle. My mother was on the right. And kind of as I looked, and I could see these 3 women were not excited at all about me getting $1 for bringing the billfold home. And so they kind of shook their head, and my grandmother said, son said, take the $1 back to Mr. Jenkins, said, we're not going to be rewarded for being honest. I said, no, you don't understand. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, that I'm going to take the $1 back. And then it was explained to me the same conclusion by my aunt and my mother, and they were all in total agreement with my grandmother.
so it's true.
So, why?
So the story's true.
It's a true story, but then they said, take it now, back to Mr. Jenkins. Okay, so I got on my bike and took it over to him, and I gave it, I said, Mr. Jenkins, I said it, he said, well, no, Boone, I wanted you to have it. And I said, I know, but my family doesn't want you to reward me for being honest. And he said, well, all right. So he took it back, but it was starting to rain, and you had to cross Burgess Street, and that's a drainage street for the town. And it was just a cloudburst. I mean, it really poured. And so when I got to Burgess Street, I couldn't cross it without wading it. So I pushed my bike through the water, and it came up to about my waist. And I was really feeling sorry for myself. And now I get back, and I come in the back. The family kind of met on a back porch. This is in summertime. It's very hot. The rain is not cold. It's you enjoyed it and all. But I came in, and they were sitting there starting to eat supper, and I think they'd already finished. But anyway, I came in, and I wanted to look pitiful, and I did, I'm sure. And then I wanted to complain about almost drowning crossing Burgess Street. And it made it real clear to me. He said, if you'd have gone when we told you to, you'd have been back before it rained. So that was the end of that. So I dried off and had supper.
You know, you seem to be a bit of a political centrist. I've noticed during the last election, both campaigns were trying to hog tie you into their corner of the ring, you know, with energy energy and everything. There's a stalemate going on in Congress, obviously. They've been butting heads for a while. When you look at energy and our energy policy and all the fighting and nothing getting done, how do you think that impacts American business and national security, especially with the emerging consumption from China and alike?
Well, the fight hasn't happened in Congress on energy. On the Natural Gas Act, I've got 185 co-sponsors that are half Democrats and half Republicans. If the leadership would just bring it to a vote, we would have the start of an energy policy in America. But it's incredible to me because we have resources again that we could use. All we have to do is leadership say this is what we're going to do. And it's unfortunate that hasn't happened. But I think it will happen, though. I think the Keystone Pipeline is going to be very important to America. And I think that that will pass. I think the president's put it off till after the election. I think that it's the people are going to demand that happens, but you're going to get direction by leadership in Canada because that's Canadian oil.
Is there any downside to the Keystone Pipeline?
I don't know of anything. Do you?
No, it befuddles me because even the unions want it. You know, obviously the Republicans want it. You know, I don't understand why it just doesn't happen.
Well, you know, you say even the unions want it. I belonged to a union when I worked for Santa Fe Railroad, and the unions are people just like you and me. We may not be politically aligned, but this is about America. It has nothing to do with politics. And this is oil. There's 250 billion barrels of oil at Fort McMurray, Alberta. And that oil is coming down in the Keystone Pipeline and being made available to the United States. Not because the Canadians are wanting to do something for America. We're doing something for each other. I used to live in Calgary in the 60s, and I operated in Canada for 30 years. And so the Canadians, that's a sovereign country, and they have a right to do whatever they want to with their resources. And we should not treat them like a state, you know, in the United States. And we act like the Canadians are sort of tied up to us, and their oil has to be marketed in the United States. Well, that's a silly idea that you want to get out of your head. That Stephen Harper, the Premier of Canada, is a man that governs the country in behalf of Canada, which is exactly what he should do. But he's made it real clear to us that you make up your mind whether you want this oil or you don't want the oil. If you don't, we're going to take it to the West Coast, British Columbia, and it's going to be shipped to Asia. It'll go to China. And we're fools if we think the Canadians are going to stand around and wait on us. There's no reason for them to. They owe us nothing, and the oil's being made available to us first, and we should take advantage of it.
I interviewed Ben Stein about 7 or 8 publications ago, and he felt that oil in particular, but fossil fuel, has been vilified for a long time, going back to the Rockefellers. And he thought a lot of it had to do with wealth envy.
It had to do with what?
And wealth envy. You know, he drew a picture of a Cadillac with horns on it, and, you know, the Rockefeller icon, and said, you know, people were a bit jealous of his success and the money. And he thought that oil in general had been, and petroleum had been vilified because of equity of gain. I was wondering if you think it's, what's fair and unfair when you talk about the profits that petroleum makes and the big companies and equity of gains. Do you think, and have you ever felt that it's over politicized or that you've been unfairly judged for being successful?
Oh, I don't know. Not really. I think, you know, people have had things to say, but you're talking about a natural resource that to find it is expensive and has a great amount of risk to it. You can't drill a dry hole. And of all the people you'll ever meet in your life, I've drilled more dry holes than anybody you'll ever meet that's drilled wells. And because I've been at it so long, and that's been my whole career, is looking for oil and gas. And but you know, it would be like somebody criticizing Microsoft. Gates has gone out, created a company from nothing to a giant in the world, and what has everybody else gotten out of it? Well, shareholders have made money out of it, of course, but also Microsoft makes a lot of money and they pay a lot of taxes. And that's what makes the economy go. When you look at the oil industry and say they make too much money, how do you decide if somebody made too much money? They pay taxes and all. They're not in violation that I know of with any of the tax laws. And so I don't know. I don't ever criticize somebody for making money, honestly. I think that's good for all of us. It's good for our country, and more power to them.
What are your feelings about offshore exploration and drilling?
Well, I know two bad, I can give you a third one too, but two in the United States that were expensive and people were killed. One was Santa Barbara Channel, which was over 50 years ago, and then Macondo in the Gulf of Mexico. That was last year, and I'd say it's a pretty good record for the industry. And so I'm not for stopping the drilling.
How do you feel about oil shale and oil sand mining?
It's another plus for the oil and gas industry and the service companies in the United States. I mean, they came up with horizontal drilling and long laterals, and they could frack many zones in that horizontal hole, and that's technology developed in America. The rest of the world's going to use it, which is good.
Do you think fracking gets a bad rap?
Well, I think it's I think a lot of times people are critical of fracking that don't really know anything about what they're talking about. And when I say that, most of the criticism that has come in the last few years is in Pennsylvania. And over 800,000 wells have been fracked in Oklahoma and Texas. Nobody ever focuses on that. Today, in the United States, there were probably over 100 wells fracked today. And so, no, I think the industry takes but I always ask people that are opposed to it, I say, well, okay, let's don't frack anymore. Let's don't produce any more fossil fuels. Now you tell me what we're going to do.
During the last election with McCain and Obama, I saw somebody wearing a T. Boone for President button. I liked it, by the way. I thought it was funny. I talked to my wife about it, but I'm wondering, what would President Pickens do to counter OPEC? What would you do if you were in the White House? You had that power.
Well, if you remember that, go back to Nixon in 70, and he said, elect me and we'll be energy independent. Going forward from Nixon to every president, Democrat or Republican, they all said something very similar to elect me and we'll be energy independent. You get up to Obama, and when he got the nomination at Denver in July of 2008, he said in 10 years we will not import any oil from the Mideast. And that was a little bit more focused statement, but there was never a plan after he said it. And I remember it very well. And but now he has come out that we've got to use our own resources, natural gas. We're number one in the world in natural gas reserves. We're fools if we don't use natural gas in place of imported oil. You ask me if I was in the White House, what would I do? I'd get off OPEC oil, because I know that oil purchased from the Mideast, some part of the money we pay for that oil goes to the Taliban. And that we will go down in history as being stupid to pay for both sides of a war. It's not necessary, and we shouldn't do it.
I have to ask, what's it like to be famous, to walk down the street and have people look your direction? What's the upside and what's the downside?
I don't know. Do you? I was at R&D restaurant last night and had two people come up to me. Sometimes you don't particularly like to be interrupted, but at the same time, they usually have something serious to talk about. And so if you made yourself identifiable, that it's, you just deal with it. It doesn't make me uncomfortable. And, but both the people last night said they appreciated what I was doing for the country on an energy plan. And that's what most of them now will talk to me about. And so that's just the way it happened. So,
well, you're an enormous success story. I'm wondering what advice you could give small business and medium business, in order to compete successfully. What would you tell them?
Oh, it's, that if they want that kind of answer, it's work hard and work smart, and you'll probably be successful. I think the work ethic is so important to success. You've got to be willing to, you don't watch the clock unless you're working someplace that you're paid by the hour, or you're paid for 8 hours and your day is done. Then you're interested in, the clock and how long I've been there and how much longer I'm going to be there. But if you're interested in making a lot of money, well, you better not ever figure what you're getting paid by the hour, because you'll be disappointed a big part of your life, because you'll put in a lot more hours than you make a lot of money.
If you were counseling a maturing CEO or a president or owner of a company about succession, what kind of advice would you give them, and what potholes would you tell them to stay clear of when they're doing succession planning?
Gosh, I've never had that question asked me. I mean, not by a CEO or anybody has ever asked me about succession. So I'll answer it, just for the first time, that I would not want to pick somebody that would be somebody exactly like me. I would never look for that. I've always told younger men that have worked for me, I said, you don't want to be like me. You want to take the best things that you see in me and take them for yourself. And then I said, there are other people that you'll look at and say, on some things they're a lot better than Boone. If that's the case, take that from them and put it with your management style. And you can come out with a better plan than I did, because I know if I could do it over again, there's some things I'd do different. But when you're making a cake for the first time, this isn't with a recipe. It isn't with a box cake. It's for the first time you're going to make a cake. Well, you better be careful in mixing the cake up. And when you get to make it the second time, and you will, as you go through your business career, you're going to get to make a cake several times. And every time you should be better at it. And so it's succession in business is extremely important. It's important for the one leaving, and it's sure important for the one coming in. And but when you look back at it, I didn't have to do that. I was the founder of Mesa in 1956, and I left in 1996, 40 years later. And I did not pick my successor at the company at that time. When I left, I was 68 years old, and I started over in business. And I didn't look back. I wasn't sad about leaving. It was a great 40 years. I built a great company, but it was time for me to leave, and I left, and they merged two companies together, and they picked their own CEO.
You know, I always wanted to meet you. It's been a pleasure. I have not been disappointed. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.